Okay, this is for Business 436, the Unit Economics Quiz, question 1. Make sure you read through this before we go through it. So basically, after you've read it, you realize that they give you all the numbers here. I would underline each number in the problem, but let's just go through it. Okay, you're making tables basically. Okay, so it says you're able to buy carbon fiber material for 40,000 per ton. Okay, you even remember that a ton is 2,000, so he's just telling you to take 40,000 per ton divided by 2,000 pounds per ton, and that gives you $20 per pound for the carbon fiber material. That's going to be a variable cost, right? Because it takes 4 pounds of that. So 4 pounds times $20 means you'll have $80 worth of material in every table. And that's per table, so it's a variable cost. If you make one table, you use 80 pounds. You make 2 tables, you use 160 pounds. You make 0 tables, you use 0 pounds. That's why it's a variable cost, because that amount used will vary with the number of tables you make. So you just got to remember in this exercise, separate your variable costs, which are costs that directly vary with the number of units you sell, and your fixed period costs, which are fixed for a period. Like it sounds, they don't change at all for that period. So no matter how many units you make, but it's a cost per period. And then your primary sunk investment, and that's a cost that you incur, that it doesn't matter typically how long you're making something, or how many units you make. It's just a cost, like the pipeline of 100,350,000, the water sample from the other day. Okay, so let's go through the rest of the costs. It says you have to buy a machine for $25,000, which can make 100 tables per day and will last 5 years. Consider that your primary sunk investment, because for those 5 years, it doesn't matter how many tables you make, you've spent $25,000. Okay, and I wouldn't figure that as a fixed period cost in this case, but I would figure it as a primary sunk investment. And you'll have to know that, because when you get to what they're asking for is your break even. Remember, break even is how quick you can pay back, or you can cover your fixed period costs. So if you put 25,000 in your fixed period cost, then you would get this wrong. Remember, that's a primary sunk investment. Okay, so then rather than make the tables yourself, you'll put the equipment in the machine shop of your good friend Kevin, who charged you $75 each to fabricate. So that tells you it's a variable cost, because for each table it's $75. So the more you make or the less you make, the higher that number or the lower that number. You ask your friend Liz to arrange your sales by getting local and national stores to buy them. Because the table is so light, you're able to ship them for an average cost of $15 each. So that's a cost per unit, so that's a variable cost. You agree to pay Liz a salary of $2,000 per month, so that's telling you that's a fixed period cost, because it doesn't matter if you make 0 units or 1,000 units, she gets paid $2,000 a month. So that's a fixed period cost per month, plus a commission of 10% each table. So even though her salary is a fixed period cost, the commission is going to be a variable cost, because the total amount of that will vary with the number of units, tables that Liz is able to sell. So right now you only know that's 10%, but that doesn't tell you how much the amount is, but we'll get to that. After some market research, you figure out the stores will pay you $400 per table wholesale. So remember, you're selling for $400 per table, okay? So that's your sales price. So going back to the commission, she gets 10% of that. So as a variable cost, 10% of 400 is $40. So that's another variable cost per unit of $40 per unit. Don't worry about that the store sells those retail for 800 or 900, because that's not what you get. You get the 400. That's all that matters. That's your revenue. This is the store's revenue, which has nothing to do with you. So you don't even need those numbers. You want to pay yourself a salary of $8,000 per month? Okay, that's a fixed period cost, because it's the same amount whether you make any units or make 1,000,000 units, or sell 0 units or sell 1,000,000 units. It's a fixed period cost. The only other person you need is a part-time office manager for market materials for Liz to use will cost $1,500 per month at fixed period cost. You can rent a small space for your business for $2,200 a month, another fixed period cost. So remember, they're asking for break even, so I want you to remember what break even is. We'll go back to the lemonade stand sheet real quick. So the first thing you want to do is figure out your contribution per unit. This says per cup, but it'd be per unit. So you got your price. In this case, it's $400 per table. Then we got to add up all those variable costs and subtract that from the price. That gets you your contribution per unit. Remember, that's your gross profit, basically. Okay, so once you get that number, you add up all your fixed period costs. Remember, so this is called break even for fixed period costs. And so you take your total fixed period cost divided by the contribution per unit, your gross profit per unit, and that tells you how many of these units you have to sell, in the case of what we're doing, every month to pay the fixed period cost. So at that point, you've broken even. You covered all your variable costs, because that's taken out right here, and then your contribution per unit tells you how many units you have to sell to break even, which means you cover all your fixed period costs. And as a this doesn't pay back the $25,000 yet on the primary sunk investment below, but it pays for what you're producing at the time. So in this case, tables. So once you get to that certain break-even point, now you've paid all your variable cost per your variable cost per unit will still change. I mean, will still be per unit, but now you've paid back those fixed period costs for that period of time. And so everything on top of that, now this contribution margin will go to pay off the primary sunk investment. See, you paid back your fixed period costs when you figure out at that number of units, and then now you can start paying back the primary sunk investment. So you want to at least, that's why I call it break even. Now you've broken even on the units you're producing, so now you can start paying back. They call it a payout, I call it a payback. You're paying back in your primary sunk investment. So let's get back to the problem that we're doing. So just remember that format. So what I like to do is I like to group everything into 4 different columns: variable cost, fixed period cost, primary sunk investment, and the other info. This is the stuff that he had up in like the little boxes at the top. Okay, so they told us, and some of this stuff you need to figure out first. If they told us it's $40,000 per ton, we know there's 2,000 pounds per ton, so it's the materials costed $20 per pound. But remember, they said that it's 4 pounds per table. So $20 times 4 pounds gets you $80 in material per unit. That's a variable cost. That goes over here in our variable costs. The wholesale sales price is $400. We'll use that down here when we start doing our contribution margin. And the commission, well, now the commission, is also a variable cost. So we knew that our sales price for wholesale is $400. We know that Liz gets 10% of that on top of her salary. So $400 per unit sales price times the 10% commission means her commission per unit is $40. That also goes in variable costs. So what other variable costs do we have? Well, we know that his friend was charging us $75 per unit to fabricate, and it was $15 per unit to ship. So your total variable costs are $210 per unit. Okay, so now we can figure out our contribution margin. We know that it's $400 per unit wholesale price, because that's what we get, because that's what we're selling it to them for. After that, the retail store sells it, and we're not involved with that. We know our variable cost for $210 per unit. That leaves us a contribution margin of $190. Now remember, they were asking for break even, not the payback or the payout, what I call payback. They asked for break even. And what is break even? Remember, break even on the lemonade stand is, or on any of these things actually, break even is your fixed period cost per period. This was per day, but in the case of what we're doing, it's per month, divided by your contribution margin, which is your gross profit per unit, which is your price minus your variable costs, gives you the gross profit. You take your total fixed period cost, divide it by that, and that tells you how many units you got to sell to break even on your fixed period costs and your variable costs, and with the price that you're selling at. Okay? So then we go down. It's a pretty simple calculation. We figured out that the contribution margin, which is our gross profit per unit, is $190. Remember, the fixed period costs were Liz's salary, your salary, the manager's salary. Remember, these are all per month in this case. Marketing materials per month, and your rent per month. $16,700. Fixed period cost $16,700 divided by your unit contribution 87.89. You can't sell 87.89 units. You got to round up to 88 units for break even. This is break even, not payout or payback. This is break even. And that's all they ask for on this one. But remember, the important thing is to organize your information. Whatever info they give you that you got to use to calculate something else, and then do 3 categories: variable costs, fixed period costs, primary sunk investment. And make sure, like I said, this was your primary sunk investment. If you put that $25,000 into here, that would have changed this number, which would have changed the calculation on break even. The reason that's not a fixed period cost is because your period costs are basically, in this case, per month. This is a 5-year thing, and that's just, equipment wears out. But that's going to be your primary sunk investment. Okay? So that's the answer to number 1. And I'll do a separate video for number 2.